Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Come out to the ballpark this week as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Charleston Dirty Birds May 5th through the 10th. Grab the kids and come on out. We kick it off on Tuesday, May 5th with Cinco de Baseball with $5 tickets and $5 food and beverage specials. And we end the week as we celebrate all moms on Mother's Day. Moms get in free. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats. Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby. Breaking news, WABC.
And some big breaking news on Katz and Cosby. Could a deal be within reach on Iran? Well, President Trump is saying that he's supposed to hear back maybe in the next few hours, John, and there's a potential that maybe this could be back on track. We'll see. And a lot of big news on the state budget, too.
Well, I mean, we got big news on the state budget. President Trump is saying there might be a deal on there. There's some bombs flying here and there, maybe. So, I mean, what is really going on? But we're going to have KT with us.
Absolutely. KT McFarland.
In a few minutes.
Yep, the best former Trump security advisor.
Yeah, KT's going to give us an update. And then Melissa DeRosa, I understand there's bombs going off in Albany. There's arguments and there's, I mean, do you guys know anything what's going on in Albany? Ed Cox is in the studio. We have Richard Weinberg, Judge Richard Weinberg, and we have Governor Patterson. You guys say a few things.
Well, what happened was that the governor went out and said, we got an agreement publicly, and Hasty said, no, don't go, not so fast.
Yeah, the Speaker of the Assembly came out. In fact, he said, there is no deal. I mean, he was like, that was pretty dramatic. He made a big speech, and he goes, I don't know what she's talking about. Governor Patterson.
Well, the way I heard it is that she met with him, and there might even, I don't know whether Andrea Stewart Cousins was there, but she met with him and some other people. And after that, she went and made that announcement. Then she had a meeting with the media around, I'd say 10 after 8 this morning that went on for a couple of hours. And in that meeting, she didn't acknowledge that there was a problem, but I think that this has happened a number of times. When I was governor, the two leaders said that we all had a deal, and so then I got mad at them. You know, that kind of stuff does happen in Albany.
In other words, everybody wants their 2 cents.
They want more than that, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, add a couple others. And you know what? It was the money issue. This was funny because I was listening to Hasty very carefully, and Hochul. He said, well, she talked about policies, to your point, but then we didn't really talk about money. And he said, and money is what makes the world go round.
And she did not mention money at the press conference either.
Yeah, so that's what he was saying. Like, it was more philosophically, but not the details. And as you know, Governor, it's the devil in the details.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of devils up there. So
and then she tossed in the pied-à-terre tax.
Yes, we got to get to that.
A new issue completely.
Yeah, that's, of course, the second homes, and that's the issue that, of course, was driving out Ken Griffin.
Exactly.
And now it looks like there's more people that are saying, see ya, sadly, to New York, Ed.
And Judge Weinberg, are you serene on a Thursday night, or you have something to say?
I have a lot to say. So my reports from Albany is that the Speaker goes on the Assembly floor, and he gets a standing ovation from the Democratic Socialist wing of the Democratic Party.
The Speaker did
the
that?
Speaker got a standing ovation from the Democratic wing.
So in other words, the Speaker is on the Socialist side.
He's carrying the water for the Democratic Socialists.
And does that mean that Hochul is more conservative?
Can you imagine that?
You know, what I think,
Governor?
What I think it is that they were all angry that they felt that Hochul preempted them, and they all cheered for him, I would think. The majority of them are socialists, but I think all the Democrats cheered for him standing up to her.
So what do you think? Where do you think it goes, you guys? And one of the other issues we haven't even hit on, you guys, is Mondani's response to these protests. That's another big issue, you guys. Did you see what he said about the protests outside the Park East Synagogue, Judge Weinberg?
Well, he wraps himself in the First Amendment, and then he attacks this economic development summit at the temple, at the synagogue, and he says that this was illegal, it was a violation of international law, which shows he knows nothing about international law. This is all privately held property. He wraps himself in the First Amendment. The First Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, does not give you a right to riot. And the mayor better learn that. He better learn that fast. The First Amendment is not a right to riot. You have a right to protest peacefully. That's it. And you're not allowed to disrupt and block entrance in and out of places of worship.
Well, you know, one of the things, too, one of the issues is that indeed that they're trying to figure out all of the layers to this, because his response was, what do you make of these protests outside of the synagogue? And his answer was, well, I support protests. And then they said, well, what about the issue? And he said, and then he went after Israel. Let's say he took it one step further. He not only did he not necessarily support the parishioners, he went after Israel, Judge Weinberg.
That's
Your
exactly
thoughts?
right. Exactly right. And he's wrong about international law. He's wrong about who owns the property. This is not governmental property that's being sold. It's private property on the West Bank. The West Bank is Judea and Samaria, which is
let's go.
historical
We got Melissa
Jewish
DeRosa
territory.
on the phone, and let's see what she has to say. You heard all the yelling and screaming in the studio, Melissa DeRosa.
I did. I wish
Tell
I
us
was
the
there
truth.
with you guys.
What the hell's going on?
Well, on this Mamdani thing, I mean, in his reaction to the protest, it was just completely disgraceful. And the guy really is the arsonist who then tries to sometimes pretend to be the fireman. And the entire thing would be funny if the consequences weren't so serious. Because I believe that Zohran Mamdani, who himself, you know, he fancies himself an anti-Zionist and anti-Israel activist, when he stands at a podium and he's the mayor of the city of New York and he says he stands by the protesters who are saying Israel doesn't have the right to exist, but then wants to pretend that he simultaneously is against anti-Semitism, these are the things that fuel anti-Semitism. We have schools, Jewish schools around the city that have swastikas that are painted on them. We have Jews in the city who are being bullied, harassed, threatened as they're walking into their houses of worship, as they're walking into their schools. And how are they supposed to believe that the mayor, who is supposed to represent everybody, is actually doing that, while at the same time he is feeding into the rhetoric that is feeding anti-Semitism in this city, in this state, and in this country.
Well
said.
said.
So I just thought the whole thing was disgraceful.
By the way, we have some breaking news sort of about clearly well beyond anti-Semitism.
Breaking news, WABC.
Just coming in, a U.S. government watchdog, Melissa and the guys, has found that at least 4 more staffers for the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Aid Agency, remember UNRWA that we heard so much about? Turns out that 4 more of them, quote, played a role in kidnapping Israelis and aiding Hamas on the October 7th, 2023 attack. Remember, originally we had heard that maybe 1 or 2. Now it turns out there are 4 more. I mean, this is disgusting, Melissa, and this is a UN group that was supposed to be helping Palestinians, but they're saying they played a direct role in these attacks. That's disgusting.
No, and sadly, I'm not surprised by it. I mean, how long did it take some of these international peace groups to condemn and acknowledge, first acknowledge and then second condemn the rapes that were going on October 7th? And so, I mean, these people have found their way, seeped into the systems, internationally, nationally, at the city level. They're working in City Hall, people who support these terrorist groups, people who condone things like globalize the Intifada, condone things like Israel shouldn't exist. And all of this feeds anti-Semitism, and it's a problem and it needs to be rooted out.
You know, the other big issue, of course, is cost. And by the way, here's another interesting update for everybody who's transiting and planning to go to the World Cup.
Breaking news, WABC.
NJ Transit has just lowered World Cup train tickets from New York City to MetLife. But get this, guys, it's still up 800%. It's still a whopping amount.
800%. What's the real number now?
Well, now the price is set, John, it was $150. Now it's set at $105. So that's still a lot. A bargain.
A bargain.
But it just goes to show.
But I don't want to be anywhere near New York City when this happens. There's so much hype around all of it. We're all going to be inundated with tourists and not be able to move around anywhere.
Yeah, they got to pay us, right, to stay away, right?
Exactly.
What do you think, Melissa? Let's get into some of the what's going on, the back and forth with Albany too, because in the middle of all of this, Hasty comes out, first Hochul comes out and says, we have a deal. And it includes, as Ed was just mentioning, that the second home, the Pia de tax, that's in the discussion. Hochul. Yes, Hochul.
Said it,
Hochul,
yeah.
excuse me, Hochul. And she presents that. And then suddenly Hasty comes out, of course, the assembly speaker, and says, no, we don't have a deal. But it looks like Hochul is agreeing to this second home tax. That's what drove out Ken Griffin, the big hedge fund guy, and many others, it looks like.
No, I mean, she's completely flip-flopped on that position. And what's going on up in Albany is really we are back to the dysfunction of the bad old days. I remember when I was growing up, my dad was a lobbyist, and like over the summer, we would be, in August, we would be doing sports when they're coming back into school preseason. And my dad would be like going back and forth from our games to going to the Capitol because they were still doing the budget in Albany in August in the 90s.
I was there, Melissa.
Yes, exactly. So you remember the good old, bad old days. And watching what's going on up in Albany right now, I mean, it's dysfunction like we haven't seen since before Andrew Cuomo was governor. And so, and by the way, people don't care, which is even scarier because it's like once you stop caring and believing that government either can affect your life in a positive way or hold your elected officials accountable, that's when things really go sideways. But no, Hochul came out this morning. It was like a comedy of errors. She does this big press conference. She leaks to the press that there's a budget deal. She does this big, long press conference. She doesn't have specifics on any of the policy issues or any of the financial issues that she's talking about. She walks out of the Red Room, and then Carl Hasty takes to the hallway and says, there isn't a deal. I told her last night she could say that we were close, but there is no deal. I'm sending my members home, and I'm never doing this again. So, the one thing that did come out is they're saying that the number for the budget is going to be around $268 billion, which, just so your listeners have some context, 5 years ago, the budget was $212 billion. So in 5 years, the budget of the state of New York has gone up about 25%, while the population of New York has increased by about 1%. That is not sustainable. Does anyone listening to this radio station or any of you guys in the studio feel that the government has improved that's worthy of 25% increase?
Governor Hochul was begging people to come back from Florida, so I don't think so.
Well, and you know what, John? And the Ken Griffin exodus, let's call it, which I don't think is because of the pied-à-terre tax. It wasn't about necessarily the pied-à-terre tax. It was about the video.
In front of his home. In front of his home, calling him out, shaming him.
Exactly. Private citizen who donates hundreds of millions of dollars to a city that, by the way, he doesn't live in as his primary residence, has thousands of employees that have good paying jobs and help feed the economy we all rely on for our services, and who was about to develop a building where he's going to add more jobs. And Zohran Mamdani stood in front of his apartment just a couple of blocks of where that United Health CEO was assassinated just 2 years ago because people were upset about the insurance companies, and people on the far left went online and celebrated the assassination of that gentleman in the most disgusting fashion ever. And he stood there and he mocked him and he put a bullseye in his back, literally.
And, if you would look at the essence of the politics of Mamdani, that shows it's the politics of envy, which is the basis of socialism, and also with respect to anti-Semitism and the way he treats that, it's the politics of hatred. That's not productive for the mayor of New York. We got to go. We got to go. There's some breaking news in Iran, and we got KT on. Melissa, we love you. Thank you for coming on today, and we'll continue this discussion maybe tomorrow.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Melissa.
Let's go to KT McFarland.
Breaking news, WABC.
And joining us now on for the very latest with Iran. And boy, there are a lot of layers, and also talk of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait, and China. KT, can you make sense of where this is headed? Because there's reports that the White House expects they might hear at least back from Iran today. What do you think?
There are a couple of things. whatever the agreement is, and the reports are there are 14 points, and essentially it's a terrific agreement. It stops Iran's nuclear program. The point is, though, unless we have the ability to inspect it and to enforce it, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Iran says an awful lot of stuff. And if they do agree to this, and that's an if, then we need to make sure that there are two parts to this. One, that we have what are called snap inspections. We have the right to go anywhere, anytime, any place with no warning and check out what we think is a violation of the agreement. And then the second part of it is if they do violate, then we have to have them resume some kind of military operation. Let's say, for example, to bomb what we think is a site.
What do you say, KT, to people who really have a problem with, like, even allowing them to have any sort of nuclear enrichment, who go, well, that's sort of what was there before and didn't work?
Well, if the agreement that they're talking about is true, they're not allowed to have any enrichment. There's a moratorium on it. Whatever they have has to be shipped out of the country. So there is a moratorium, 20-year moratorium, and 20 years is a long time. I think that there are a couple of things. The people who say, well, we can't trust them. No, of course we can't trust them. But that means we need the ability to enforce it, and that means we need the ability to take military action. So keeping some a significant American presence in the region and then working with other countries like Israel, like the UAE, like Saudi Arabia to help us enforce it. But the people who say, well, we have to have regime change, that makes me really nervous because we're not good at regime change. We've never been good at regime change, whether it was Vietnam or whether it was Afghanistan or Iran or Iraq. We've not had regime change that we've ever succeeded in. So to topple the regime, what comes next? We don't want it to be us to come next. Now, if the regime is sufficiently weakened, which we hope it is, that the Iranian people or some element within the Revolutionary Guard or the civilian leadership then changes their mind and has either different leadership or the same leadership with a changed attitude, that would be pretty good for us.
What do you say, KT McFarland, about Saudi Arabia? This has been interesting that Saudi, apparently, according to a lot of reports, said you can't use our air bases and airspace for this, Project Freedom, which was allowing transport of other ships through. And that is what sort of is causing President Trump to say, well, maybe we're going to go back to doing it now that they've allowed it. Like there's been some backdoor stuff, and also Kuwait and Qatar were upset that they weren't told about certain things. How do you read these elements there? Because they're allies of ours.
Yeah, I'm not terribly concerned with it. I mean, if the Saudis said you can't use our bases, we're mad at you because you didn't let us know. Well, guess what we've just done? I mean, apparently 20 minutes ago, we've just bombed some of the sites in Iran. Not significant ones, but to answer what the Saudis are doing, I think that it's a good idea to stop Project Freedom, not forever, but for about the next 72 hours for the following reason. We want to have a good summit with China, and we don't want to have some incident that could blow up in everybody's face and then potentially even cancel that summit meeting. The Chinese need that summit meeting a whole lot more than we do, but we need it too. And I have a feeling that, especially since the Iranian foreign minister was just in meeting with the Chinese foreign minister in Beijing. I mean, the seat is hardly cold before our guys are showing up. I think that we're going to say, yeah.
I did an interview with Forbes today, worldwide, and I said to them that I think if President Trump is going to go see to China, that there's a deal that they could both shake hands on with Iran, and that was just my gut feeling.
Your gut feeling is 100% right. I think that Trump and Xi Jinping are going to sit down and say, okay, we're the adults in the room. Let's figure out a way to end this. And that the Chinese are going to then pressure the Iranians to stop. China doesn't care about Iran's nukes. They care about getting Iran's oil, and they care about the strait being opened and the blockade being dropped, because it's not just the Iranian oil. It's the Iraqi oil, it's the Saudi, United Arab Emirates. All that oil goes to China. And that's something like 40% of China's imported oil. And that's about 10% of its overall energy needs. China can't survive for long without feeling enormous pressure on its manufacturing if the strait stays closed.
And
so I think the Chinese are going to say, John, you are 100% right. You got it. Your gut was good.
Well, let's see what happens now. I mean, we'll know next week. And the other thing is, I missed it on why is Saudi Arabia pulling that tactic on us?
And the report is, and again, these are all unconfirmed reports by people that won't give their names. So who knows what they're worth. But that the Saudis
so in other words, it might not be true.
A, it might not be true.
Okay.
And B, it may be, somebody's, I think to me, the better reason to stop Project Free, we made the point. We've got destroyers that have gone through the strait. We've taken American flag vessels. Whether we take another 5 or 6 in the next 2 days, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference with the oil in the global market. But what it will do is prevent a crisis from happening that blows up in the face of a U.S.-China summit. We need that summit because I think Trump will sit down and say, no nukes. China, you push the Iranians to get us no nukes, and then we will open the strait, and then you can have the world is a happier place.
So, KT, what's your prediction for sort of the next 24, 48 hours? I'm just sort of curious because there seems to be, like, we're hearing mixed messages also on the, Project Freedom. Like, on one hand, it was up, then it stopped, whether it was for the Saudi or not. And also, where do you see discussions? I mean, Trump, on one hand, he was telling our friend Brett Baer, both of our friends, that he was saying by the end of the week, that it's Thursday, so there's not a lot of time.
Got 48 hours left. I think that the Iranians are going to come back. My guess is that they'll either say no or they'll say yes, but they won't be able to carry it out because I think the bigger problem is nobody in Iran knows who's in charge. And that the foreign minister and the speaker of the parliament, they seem to be willing to do a deal, or at least say they're willing to do a deal. It's the IRGC, the military guys, who don't want to do the deal. So what kind of a deal can you have? Again, you have to have one that's verifiable, and you have to have one that we can enforce.
Yeah, that is the bottom line. Ed Cox.
And KT, but to have a real deal, there's got to be one more big kinetic action on the part of the United States and maybe UAE and some others in order to make. I'm analogizing to the December bombing in 1972.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. That Iran is going to, I don't think they've quite gotten the message yet. They haven't really accepted the fact that they've lost this war. And maybe what it takes is another big, bombing or some kind of kinetic action. I don't think President Trump wants to destroy their oil infrastructure because that's what's going to pay for the rebuilding of Iran once the war is over. But I do think he has military targets that are still available, and we have twice as many assets now to put against Iran than we did 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Judge Weinberg.
KT, forgive me for being a skeptic again, 2 days in a row, but rebuild what?
He's consistent, right?
Rebuild what? Are they going to rebuild the terrorist networks, their ballistic missile system? What are they going to rebuild? Are they going to start taking care of their people and give them housing and health care? What are they going to rebuild with all the money they make from this oil? Why are we so concerned about them rebuilding as opposed to knocking them in the behinds once and for all that we control the situation dynamic?
Well, I'm assuming that the post-Iran war is a regime that we can work with, either the current regime that's got a very different song that they're singing or a changed regime. But you're right. If it's just the same old, they're just going to go back to spending money on proxies and missiles and nukes. But if there is a different Iran, and maybe this isn't going to happen.
You need a different regime.
We need a different regime, but one that we don't have to run.
And the problem is that even if they surrender, they're surrendering for 6 months, hoping that the Democrats get control of the Senate and the Congress.
And President Trump is not going to be president forever. And so you get another Biden in there, another Obama in there.
Listen, guys, you're yelling and screaming for no reason in that. It is, the facts are the facts. Okay, he can only do so much. He can only, he's president till. To 2028. And let's see what happens.
Let's see.
Day by day.
Let's see. Look, I give him a lot of credit. He's been a heck of a lot more courageous.
There's no other president in the world that has been as tough as him.
Absolutely. Courageous that he did this. And let's pray some good news comes through in the next few days. Let's pray. KT, thank you. We love you. KT, thank you so much.
Thank you, KT.
Thank you. And John, we're going to take a break and then we're going to go to Israel. We're going to be talking to Mike Huckabee.
Look forward.
Roger Stone here. Every day you wait, your money loses value, but gold and silver don't follow those same rules. American Sovereign Bullion gives you access to a nationwide wholesaler network, helping you secure aggressive pricing on real physical metals. Call 844-272-2428 now to get your free gold and silver guide to learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver, delivered right to your door or with a gold IRA. Visit ASBgold.com. That's ASBgold.com for your free gold and silver guide today.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Thursday night, what the heck is going on in Iran? What's going on in Lebanon? What's going on in Israel? Well, who is the best person to ask? Well, with us today is Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and one of the great Americans and a religious man. Ambassador, I hope you like Israel because you've been spending a lot of time there.
You know, I'm living here for the past year plus a month or so, and it's been an incredible experience. I've been through 5 wars in just a little over a year. It's never boring, I can tell you that, John, and this has been an incredible year. When the president decided to finally stand up to Iran this year and say 47 years of threatening America is enough, I'm sitting here on the front row seat of it, and I know a lot of people thought, boy, I wish this wasn't happening, and I understand that, but I'm telling you, the president has done the right thing by saying to Iran, you're not going to get a nuclear weapon, because they're crazy enough to use it. And they've been saying for 47 years they want to use it against America.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, what happened was, and it's very, very sad that it happened. During the Biden administration, what happened was that President Biden allowed them to go from 300,000 barrels a day that they were selling enough to feed their people to 3 million barrels a day at $100 a barrel. They made so much money, they were able to hire the terrorists, and there was a mess. I
think a lot of people don't fully understand that this is a very strange neighborhood, this part of the world. Israel is a nation that is tiny in its geographical footprint as well as its population, and yet it has an extraordinary punching power well above its weight, and it has to, because every day when Israelis wake up, they have a number of nations that would love to annihilate them, and have tried in every way in the world to do so since they've come back to existence in 1948. Their resilience is something to behold, John, but I don't think most Americans appreciate that Israel is not only standing just for themselves, but they are standing for Western civilization. They're standing for the rule of law. They're standing for a government and a people who believe that every individual really does matter. And not only do they matter, but that there has to be a level of accountability and responsibility for our actions. And that's something that is lost on so many people back home. It's a message that I hope people can take to heart, because there's so many lies being said about the people of Israel. I'm very glad that President Trump recognizes that this is a partnership that is as valuable, perhaps far more valuable to America than America's benefit even processes toward Israel.
You're right. We stand for Western civilization. We stand for, the Christian Judeo values in life. And that's what President Trump is trying to maintain, that Western civilization is, we want civilization. And some of these terrorist groups are not like that. To give us an update, what is going on in Lebanon? Is there peace or is there war?
I would say that even though there is a declared ceasefire, Hezbollah continues to fire rockets and arms into northern Israel. Israel is not going to stand back and let that happen. So it's more calm than it was. I think we have a pathway toward a peace agreement. But I hope everybody understands that Israel is not at war with Lebanon. Israel is at war with Hezbollah, which is not a nation state. It's a terror organization supported by Iran. And it's one of the reasons that going after Iran is really going after the mothership for Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. They're spread all over the world. But it all goes back to the same kitchen. Maybe a little bit of different dishes, but they still come from the same chef in the same kitchen, and that's Tehran. That's why everything that's happening here is generally connected. But what I'm hoping is that we can get to a place where Lebanon recognizes they have no future as a country as long as Hezbollah continues to divide and destroy any peace they have. Israel would love to get out of Lebanon. They would love to withdraw completely, but they can't do it when 200,000 of their people are displaced in the north because Hezbollah continues to fire rockets in their roofs, shoot artilleries, and send single-use drones across the border to kill civilians. And that's what I hope people know. Hezbollah doesn't target the military. They target civilians.
Ambassador Huckabee, how many bad people, how many Hezbollah are there in Lebanon?
There's probably 50, 60,000 minimum, maybe more. There are many others who are sympathetic, but the actual warriors are significant. I think what we also have to recognize is that they have such a foothold and they're intimidating. It's like dealing with the mafia. These are not people who simply want a neighborhood of their own. It's not about what they want. It's what they don't want anyone else to have. They don't want the Christians of Lebanon to be able to live in peace. Lebanon has long been a Christian nation, and the radical Shia Muslims of Hezbollah want to destroy that and want to completely decimate a beautiful country. And Lebanon is a beautiful country with lovely people. They deserve better, and they'll never get better as long as Hezbollah is there.
Understood. Now, I was on live television or radio with Forbes before, and what I said to them is that I believe, and that's just my opinion, and I like to run it by you. I believe that before President Trump goes to China, that I think that China may probably lean on Iran to help make the peace and open up the Strait of Hormuz. Any opinion on that?
I think it very well could happen. Look, I never underestimate President Trump. He always surprises me, and I think most people in the world. When something looks like it's impossible, there's no way forward, he shows up. He has a knack for persuading people and negotiating things that no one else could pull off. The Board of Peace that we're seeing that is moving things forward in Gaza after a long stalemate that got all of the hostages released when no one thought that that was ever going to happen. No one but President Trump could make that work. No one but President Trump could get all those Arab nations to unanimously come to Sharm el-Sheikh and sign the peace agreement back last October. So I don't know what exactly will come out of the trip to China, but I'm convinced it's going to be a very, very significant trip for not just China and the U.S., but for the future of the peace that we desperately need in this world.
Well, I'm like you. I stand side by side with you. I have optimism, and I hope it works. And Ambassador Huckabee, thank you for everything you do for America, and have common sense, which is most important. And stay safe in Israel, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Look forward to it, John. God bless, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Wow, what a great discussion from Mike Huckabee right there in Israel, John. That was fantastic.
I know. You had to leave the office for a few minutes, and, life goes on. We got it done.
Got it done, I'm telling you.
I'd rather have you here.
I know. Well, you know that. I love that. But I'm glad that it got it done, and also to get the Israel perspective from Mike. Who better? So, and Israel's waiting. There's a report that just came out a little bit ago that Israel is waiting for all options.
Did Israel knock off the head of Hezbollah?
Yeah, the Hezbollah. They had a big hit. They're continuing their strikes in Lebanon.
So what does that mean? My God.
This is getting interesting.
In other words, between Israel and the United States, they're taking no prisoners. In other words, you want to screw around, somebody dies.
Right, and Israel's got their number. Which is why nobody wants to say they want to negotiate the deal for Iran either, because they're like short
you
term.
have the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya Foods. I love those Goya beans.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And here are some of the great Goya headlines of today, everybody. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Pope Leo held their meeting at the Vatican today. It lasted about 2.5 hours. It marked the first meeting between a member of the president's cabinet and the first American pontiff in almost a year. The State Department said the two talked about the situation in the Middle East. And also the U.S. effort to escort cargo ships through the Strait of Hormuz could start back up soon. President Trump said he originally suspended Project Freedom at the request of Pakistan to help move the ball forward on peace talks with Iran. There are reports, as we were just talking about with KT, that Saudi Arabia suspending the U.S. military from using its bases and airspace may have played a role as well. And everybody stick with us, because coming up we're going to be talking with General Jack Keane, who better than that, and also Ilhan Omar. There's a lot of stuff there. We're going to be talking with Norm Coleman, the former Minnesota senator.
I think there's nobody better than Jack Keane, and I'm glad he's coming on to tell us what the heck is going on.
He's got the inside skinny. And also, John, by the way, we also have Miranda Devine. So we got an action-packed show. Stick with us. We'll have much more after the break.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And just in the last few hours, there have been some limited U.S. strikes against a couple ports there in Iran, hitting one of the areas, Bandar Abbas, amid, of course, all the tensions with the Hormuz Strait and so many other things. Well, what does this mean, and where is this going? And is it inevitable that maybe President Trump might need to use more military action? Well, joining us now is General Jack Keane.
Well, I'm glad Jack is on, because a lot of things are going on, and I think Jack might know a little bit more than we do.
I bet he always does, and I want to tell everybody, because Jack has some great credentials, too. Jack is a retired 4-star general. He's the chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and he's also a Fox News senior strategic analyst. So, Jack, thank you so much. Well, where's this headed?
Well, I suspect what this has to do with these two strikes. If you recall, when we began Operation Freedom, which was opening the Straits of Hormuz, we told the Iranians not to fire on U.S. warships and also not to attack or retaliate against our allies or U.S. bases. And if you did, then we would not just conduct defensive operations in the Straits of Hormuz, we would launch offensive operations. And what they did is they did fire on a U.S. warship, and they did fire twice at UAE infrastructure in their country. And we did not respond, and many of us were surprised by that, because we thought we should have. And instead, we actually shut down this Project Freedom, as you know, and we've gone into negotiations. I think that is likely in retaliation for what took place there. I don't agree with the steps to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. I think taking them away by force is the right thing to do. I believe going into negotiations is misguided. And the reason I say that is I think the only thing we should be negotiating with the Iranians is the terms of their surrender. And as opposed to coming up with any negotiations, even if we got everything we asked for, what that guarantees is, one, the regime survives, and two, we are going to help it recover.
General,
and that means
I agree with you.
We're going to unfreeze assets, and we're going to give them money just like Obama did.
General, I agree with you. The problem is, if they agree, if the Democrats are in charge in 6 months because of November, then, they're going to do, that's what the Iranians will be delaying for.
Well, I mean, our military operation was supposed to end 2 weeks ago if we hadn't stopped it, John.
Yes.
So we would have been at final stages for sure by now. before May is over with.
So your point, Jack, is finish the job, right? Finish the military job.
Finish the military job, and then we hold hot. Right now, we're blocking everything coming out of Cargill. That's the distribution point for their oil. They have a pipeline that leads from the mainland to it. It's about 16 miles off the coast. We can absolutely force almost immediate economic collapse on that after we finish the military operation if we destroyed all of their oil and gas infrastructure that they have. We could hold that over their head and bring them to the deal that I'm talking about is the terms of surrender. We probably don't need to call it that, but that's what it is, as opposed to unfreezing frozen assets, removing sanctions, and giving the regime a lifeline so that they are going to recover at some point. And what a gut punch that is for the 90 million Iranian people there that are really hoping that this regime is so hurt that they're susceptible to collapse. And getting them involved in this is something we should be doing with a CIA and a Mossad as well. That's my thoughts on it in terms of kind of where we are right now.
Governor Patterson.
Well, General, we beat them so badly in the last 6 weeks that you would think that we would understand, and we're playing with the House's money. So your idea, first, to make sure that the next time there's a meeting is to negotiate how it's going to be now that we've taken over, is precisely what has to happen. And I'm kind of surprised because this is not what I would have probably said 10 years ago, but what I think is I don't understand why in key positions people have not taken the advice that you just gave.
Well, I think, listen, the president has people around him that really have been pushing a negotiated deal, right before the Israelis attacked. Remember that, going back into prior to June?
That's right,
yeah. Gave them a 60 days to do it, and they didn't do it. And then he green-lighted the Israelis in June to begin the so-called 12-day war, and then we destroyed part of their nuclear enterprise. So we've had these people involved in this. And listen, so we understand, the Iranians are masters at this. How many times have we heard, it looks like we're going to be close to a deal. They really want to make a deal. I don't dispute that our negotiator is a lion or anything. The Iranians come forward and say, yeah, we're ready to do this now. We're ready to do that. And they're telling our guys this, but they're lying to them. They're bold-faced lying to them. Because when it comes down to really putting chips on the table, remember we went to they took the Straits of Hormuz, and why did they take the Straits of Hormuz and establish a toll booth there? They wanted us to stop the war. What did we do? We stopped the war. And then we went into a 2-week deadline for negotiations. And that's what they were telling our guys. Hey, we're going to make a deal. But then when it comes down to put it on the table, Vahidi, who's in charge of the IRGC, he says, no, we're not doing that. And, our guys came home and their guys came home. Here we are, back doing it again. Why are we doing it again? Because the Iranians are playing for time. The closer they get to what John is talking about, the midterm elections, they believe the more pressure is on President Trump. And really what they want President Trump to do is not so much make a bad deal, which I don't think he'll do. They just want him to stop the war, declare victory. It's over. They survive, and they go on to recover and continue to rule the country. That is the game that these guys are playing.
Yeah.
That's their strategy. And I think we're walking right into it.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Stall.
Exactly. Drag it out. Jack Keane, really important stuff. You've got to keep us posted because I agree. I think leaving it as is a dangerous thing for history.
I agree with you totally.
Yep.
Great talking to you.
Thank you
so much,
Thank
General
you.
Keane.
Thank you. And John, big stuff coming, obviously domestically, especially from the state of Minnesota. And Ilhan Omar, by the way, so far has refused to hand over documents tied to the fraud.
I understand we have Senator Coleman coming on.
Yep, he's on.
I want to know how she went from a $30 million net worth. What's her name?
$300 million.
30, I thought.
There was a 300 at one point, and then it went down, and then it went
now,
to 18
now it's down to
18 to 95,000. That's quite a drop.
Bad accountants.
I mean, Senator Coleman, any idea how who
her accountant is?
So let me just say, General Keane said the Iranians are good at lying. Ilhan Omar is good at fraud. Whether it's just. I was in government for many, many years, and I was like remortgaging my house about once or twice a year to pay for kids' college tuition. And all of a sudden, she goes from $60,000 worth of net worth to millions of net worth in a short period of time. So that has to be dealt with. She's obviously not answering any questions about her involvement in the massive fraud program that was perpetrated in Minnesota U.S. taxpayers. With the Somali community, with her supporters, with her campaign contributors, and so. Unfortunately, in Minnesota, the legislature split, so we couldn't get a subpoena. You couldn't get enough. It was a party line vote. So Republicans voted to subpoena her. Democrats said no. But in the end, the state's not going to be doing this. Governor Walz didn't do it. The Attorney General was involved in this. He didn't do anything. It's up to the feds. It's Donald Trump's, Justice Department, FBI. They've gotten close to 80 convictions. They put people in jail. But she's really turned a blind eye to the Minnesota taxpayers, refuses to answer any questions, even though she was close to the masterminds behind this. A woman, Amy Bach, the owner of the Safari restaurant, Salim Saeed. These are her close associates, her close friends, her contributors. And in the end, I hope justice is done. But how far up the food chain this goes remains to be seen.
Norm Coleman, one of the things she said today, just a little bit ago, was, quote, the fact that she's being investigated is, quote, straight up racism, like it's racist to investigate massive fraud. The other side of this is, I call this DEI fraud. And in other words, the governor allowed this to go on, by the way, ignoring, scores of whistleblowers, allowed it to go on because this was a political base. The Somali community, these are the contributors, same for the Attorney General, the same for Omar. They turned a blind eye to this because they didn't want to upset part of their political base. And as a result, taxpayers really suffered the most massive fraud during the entire COVID period. $250 million just in this feeding our future. And that money went to fancy cars, it went to real estate, it went to villas. So the taxpayers got screwed in all of this. And in the end, Ilhan Omar has yet to pay the piper. We'll see how it plays out. Judge Weinberg.
So, Senator, if Governor Walz has covered this up, if the state legislature controlled by the Democrats has covered this up, if the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, has covered this up, why isn't there an open rebellion on part of the people of Minnesota to hold these people accountable?
Yeah, that's the Judge. I ask that question all the time, though I am reminded of something Ed Koch once said when he lost an election. The people have spoken; they deserve to be punished. I don't know why they keep electing these folks. Let's see what happens this November. Let's see what happens. I mean, there's no question that this was fraud, massive malfeasance. The governor did nothing. The Attorney General did nothing, and that's being generous when I say did nothing, because in the end, what was their involvement? Why did they turn a blind eye? But you're right, Judge. Ultimately, the taxpayers, the citizens, they in elections they make some choices. And let's see, the governor, by the way, is not running again, so he's walking away from this.
Yeah, Governor, did you hear, Senator, did you hear that Tom Fenton came on? He's with Judicial Watch, the watchdog group, and they've been doing it for years. He blew us away. He came here on the show last week and was saying that across the country, he believes there's anywhere from 20 up to 24 million Americans that are improperly on voter rolls, that shouldn't be voting, that are not eligible. I mean, that's a stunning number if 24 million shouldn't be there.
Rita, I lost the Senate race by 312 votes 9 months after the polls closed. when I won on election night, when the machines were recounted. In the end, that's a whole other issue. Voter ID. Minnesota doesn't have a voter ID. So you can show up and you can have one person vouch for the 20 kids on the bus. Say, yeah, I know them all.
Say that again, because I heard about that in Minnesota. That if you have one voter, He's
One
allowed.
voter
The person is allowed to vouch for 20 other people.
Yeah, I know all these people, and then they get to vote. And in fact, so after when you vote, you give your address, whatever, and they send you a postcard afterwards. My sister-in-laws have a performing arts center on the north side of Minneapolis. After the election, I think they got 8 or 10 postcards of people who said they live there. Nobody lives there. Nobody lives there. It's a performing arts center. And so, no, it's, the voter ID, it's so simple. In the end, we all should want fair elections. We all should want one person, one vote.
Absolutely.
Democracy depends on that. And so the fact that the Democrats are fighting that still today in Congress, but in Minnesota, no, there's no voter ID. There's same-day registration. So in the end, you got to clean house, but you're not going to clean house if the folks at the top or the folks who are elected don't want to clean house. And this governor and this attorney general and this congresswoman didn't want to clean any house because it was a house that they helped build, and it was a house that defrauded taxpayers in Minnesota in a massive, massive way.
Yeah, and it's big dollars, as you just talked about, and it may just be the tip of the iceberg.
I just want all our listeners, we might have 1 million listeners out there, all our listeners to listen to what Senator Coleman just said.
The sad thing, John, is that this is probably not just about Minnesota. Not probably. It's not just about Minnesota. Again, you have throughout the country the same dynamic. You have folks who they don't want to go after any of their political bases. These are Democrats, and that's what we're talking about. Folks that spend money and just want to spend the taxpayer dollars like it's nothing. One of the things that one of the lawyers for one of the defendants said was that we kept emptying the cookie jar, but they kept filling it. As if somehow that it wasn't the fault of the bad guy, because they kept giving them money. They kept refilling the cookie jar.
That's a good analogy, Senator. We could all relate to that.
And so in the end, I think you've got to look at the Californias and you've got to look at these other states where you can have the same dynamic. Governors, legislatures, members of Congress who don't want to make sure that the taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely, don't want to stop fraud, don't want to stop corruption. And so I don't think this is just a Minnesota phenomenon. It's certainly, this is the big story, and this is was the most massive fraud during the COVID era. But I fear that you're going to see the good news is if you've got people like Mehmet Oz, who's on top of this stuff. You've got folks now you've got an attorney general's office, under Donald Trump, that is on top of this. He's created his own, a fraud, key person to kind of focus on fraud right now.
Yep, they're on it. They are on it.
But it's not going to happen in the state of Minnesota, unfortunately. It's not going to happen because of the leadership we have. Let's see if we can get a change of leadership in November so the taxpayers can have some sense of confidence that their dollars are being used wisely. That hasn't been the case so far.
Yeah, bravo. Well, let's hope so. Senator Norm Coleman, thank you so much.
Senator.
Thank you for always fighting the good fight.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you guys, we're going to take a break. We have Miranda Devine. She's got some wild stuff about that race in Maine.
Some more breaking news.
Some more breaking news, always.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
We want to wish a happy birthday to one of our colleagues today.
Yeah, we love Brian Kilmeade.
Brian Kilmeade is on every day on WABC from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock.
To 12 o'clock. And, of course, great Fox News host and great friend and colleague of all of ours. We love Brian.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Happy birthday, Brian.
Let's go to Australia.
Oh, let's go to Australia. And who better than the great Australian, Miranda Devine? Miranda, it feels like a whole other continent if you look at what's happening in Maine, that this guy is actually the candidate. Talk about this guy and how Democrats seem to be falling in line with a guy with a Nazi tattoo.
100%. Well, I am coming to you from New York, and unfortunately, New York, like Maine, is suffering from Democrat lefty disease. And Graham Plattner, let's hope, He's the Senate Democrat candidate there running against Susan Collins. Let's hope that the polls are wrong and that he is not actually going to beat her in the election, because he has a Nazi tattoo. He's tried to disguise it, but he had it there for 13 years quite happily. He's written on various Reddit posts on social media about sort of apologizing for rape or defending rape and defending violence. He is
actually
really
Miranda,
yeah.
and I found this so offensive as a woman. He came out and said the women that were raped, they need to act like adults and like buck up, essentially. I mean, that's almost a direct quote. That's appalling.
Yeah, it's basically saying, well, if you get drunk, then you asked for it, saying that the rapes of Israeli women on October 7 was nothing. Like, he downplays actual violence, and he has this sort of demeanor where he dresses in plaid and he acts like an everyman, and he claims he was an oyster farmer, etc. And he's actually a silver spooner who went to a $75,000 a year private elite prep school in Connecticut from, very wealthy family, did very well. He's just a kind of a fraud from the beginning, but Democrats are trying to put forward candidates who cosplay conservatives. So he sort of is in the conservative costume. He's a performative conservative. He seems like, he's anti-war and he's anti-Trump, but he's pro-worker. He's sort of harking back to the Democratic Party that we kind of all wish was still there.
Yeah, and speaking of a great Democrat, we have Governor David Paterson. Governor.
Miranda, I was wondering, there have been plenty of times in the past on both sides of the aisle where somebody did something during a campaign that was just outlandish and horrible, and the party elders get together and make the person step down.
Well, the opposite happened here, because Janet Mills, the Maine governor, she was running against Plattner for the primary, and she's dropped out because she didn't have enough money. She wasn't getting the support from the Democrat donors, the Democrat machine. Clearly, the power is now resting with the far left, the Luigi left, the Mamdani left. And that's what Graham Plattner has going for him. He's a darling of those people because he's one of them.
And doesn't he have the same campaign? He's got Morris Katz, who helped Mamdani big time, is also now helping with Graham Plattner.
Correct, yeah. And so that's, he's a young guy. He's very cleverly using social media. There's an ad that Graham Plattner's just dropped, which is sort of like a WWE demeanor attitude, like a terrible gravelly voice, and just very dark and antagonistic to Susan Collins. Susan Collins, by contrast, I heard this on the Mark Halperin podcast, The Morning Meeting. Susan Collins has a vying ad, which is quite the opposite. It's a very positive ad from somebody in Maine. Their township had a problem with the break wall that they needed some federal money for, and the minute that it fell apart, Susan Collins is on the phone saying, "Don't worry, I'll help you get it fixed," and she did. So it's just a very pleasant, calm, positive sort of putting Maine in the picture, and the people of Maine are the number one priority for the candidate. Whereas Graham Plattner is this sort of, probably will do well, rabble-rousing sort of money raiser, because it just plays into everybody who just hates Donald Trump and has violence on the brain.
Yeah, that's scary. It's the I Hate Trump campaign, it seems. And it's frightening that they're willing to even accept somebody with a Nazi tattoo. Boy, have times changed, Miranda. Miranda, thank you. We love you. It's always so great to have you, and everybody check out her Pod Force One, too. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rita. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And what do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.
Thanks for listening to Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. You can hear Katz and Cosby weekdays at 5. It's the 5 o'clock show on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.